Hi. What's up?
What's this week been like for you? I mean, is it a notch above your usual just fight weeks with all that's going on with the fan?
No, I think this is actually like the most chill fight that I've had. Yeah, in comparison, I mean, the Carmouche fight I think was the most media, and the Misha fight was the most distractions, and the McMahon fight was the least amount of rest. So this has got pretty much the least press, least distractions, and the most rest of any camp that I've had with the UFC yet. And so I've never felt better. I'm kind of like, I'm cruising through. This is like the comfy version of a title fight, and I'm sure it's not nearly as comfy for Alexis, but all these other girls can say like, oh, this is just like every other fight for me, I swear, but it really is for me. So I really feel like I'm settling in and feeling comfortable here, and I really feel like that makes me fight more to my potential than feeling out of your element.
Well, it's interesting that
Mayweather swagger used to be on this big stage.
What?
You would say you got that Mayweather swagger, like you've been the big stage. You're used to it. They're coming into your kingdom.
I wouldn't go so far as to give myself the title of having Mayweather swag. I'm flattered that you would think so, but no, I don't think. I think that takes many years of domination and 40. What's he like? 43-0 now? 46-0? Yeah. When I get to 46-0, I'll have Mayweather swag.
When you say that, that's interesting, and you want to win, obviously. There are people who question Rick that for UFC in the business, would it be better if you're 46-0? Would it be better if you lose? And obviously, she doesn't want to lose. You don't want to lose. Can you see both sides of it? How important is to have a champion with a 0 on it? Kind of that mystery of like they can't lose or undefeated.
Well, I think it's good to have dominant champions, because if it's constantly circulating all the time, that's not good for the sport either. And I think when people quote some people, they're just trying to disguise their own opinion. So you could either quote an actual person or say, I think this.
But if people say there's kind of a mystery to an undefeated champion, a dominant person, and once you lose, kind of that's a little taken away because they really beat. Other people will say, but then you have something to go back and get. You obviously don't want to lose. Ever.
of course she doesn't.
Yeah, that's your question? You're asking if I don't want to lose ever?
Do you understand if someone would say that if she lost, she'd be hungry to get it back, and that's kind of the side they get.
I think people could make storylines out of any situation.
Ronda, one of the storylines from the Davis camp was that they've got you this is a great time to beat you because of all the distractions outside of fighting. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think what I said originally, that this is actually the fight with the least amount of distractions, the most rest, and the least press. I mean, this is the actually, compared to all the other camps, this has been the easiest one. And so, and I always count on my opponent coming in perfect. I'm counting on her coming in perfectly trained. She's so experienced. I don't think it's really going to bug her to walk in there. I think it's going to be the best version of Alexis Davis that ever happened. But if they're hoping that I'm going to walk in distracted and then get tired after the first round, I mean, those are very bad things to be planning for. You should be planning for me at my best, not hoping for me at my worst.
Break her down a little bit. What are some of the things that she brings into the octagon?
Well, Alexis, unlike any of my previous opponents, she doesn't have one area that she really extremely specializes in. She's good, at everything, and so there isn't one area that I can bring her to that'll make her really uncomfortable. Like when I was fighting McMahon, and I really pushed it more into the striking side, when I knew that she wouldn't be expecting that. I don't have a hole like that to look for with Alexis, and so I really just have to be better than her in every single area. And a couple things that I'm really going to be looking out for is her probably to push kick from a distance to try and keep me away. A lot of her best strikes are in middle range, so she'll probably try and bring me into middle range. And if I do try to come close to clinch, I know that they're going to risk throwing elbows when I come close. And also because of the stance that I had fighting with Man Push, who was a wrestler, I would expect that they would think I would be at a tilt again. They would probably train a lot of left head kicks for this one as well.
Ideally, would you like to beat her by way of armbar or KO?
I don't care how I win. I just want it to be exciting. I want all the fans to still be wanting more after it's done, and I want to be as unscathed as possible.
Ronda Rousey is out of UFC 176 with an injury. I know you're focused on this opponent, but let's just say hypothetically, this fight ends very quickly, and Dana White knocks on the dressing room door. Can you even entertain the idea?
you know, I told them I would fight on 24 hours notice, and they know that. And it's not, when I make a promise or a statement like that, I mean it. I'm not just kind of like, yeah, 24 hours notice, not really. You know, I mean it. But how many days is that? Would the athletic commission clear me?
About a month. And it's in LA.
If they needed me to step up, I would do it. I mean,
August 2nd.
I would appreciate the rest, but if they really needed me to do it, they know I would do it.
Would we say to say that you should have the more often you fight, the sharper you are? From the jiu-jitsu background, which y'all play multiple 4 times a day.
Well, it's a judo background, but yeah, I feel like ideally I would like to fight like, you know, every 6 months or so, but I can fight much more often because of the judo format. You would fight weekend after weekend after weekend with training camps in between. You know, it wasn't really, there was no like peaking structure or anything like that. You just had to be ready to go regardless of how you felt. And because of that, yeah, I feel like I could be ready at any time.
How big it is for you to be a fighting champion? I seen in the preview that you talked about you don't want to see that girl just sit on there and have a belt and defend it here and there, that you would be a fighting champion. How big it is?
Well, I feel like I also have a lot to prove that because I also have the, you know, I've been going and making movies on my off time, that the fans would feel like I am deprioritizing them and putting, you know, that other stuff ahead of them. And so by being the most active champion, no one can really have that argument, you know. And maybe instead of hating on me so much, they realize that I'm really just working really hard.
The school of thought is that the reason you're so active is because you don't plan to fight for another 2 or 3 years. Do you think that far out? You just blah blah blah.
I'm just, yeah, fight by fight, I reassess afterward. You know, if 2 years ago, I would have no clue what I'd be doing right now. So I'm not going to try and plan 2 years in the future.
Is there anything new that you've learned about yourself during this training camp?
I learned about myself during this training camp. I love what I do. I could have been spending this time, you know, eating cake in Cancun, but this is what I'd rather do, and this is really what I feel like my calling is more than anything else. More than going and making a movie or laying on a beach. I wanted to be in fight camp because this is what I was really born for.
I wanted to ask about the other facet of your life, Hollywood. You went to the Cannes Film Festival. You came down in a tank with all the cast of the entire Expendables film. What was that like?
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but I broke my heel climbing in a tank. I broke my heel, and I was like, I broke my heel, guys! And then so I had to, with the broken heel, I had to climb out of the tank and through all this stuff over to like the red carpet thing, all the broken heel, and make it all work. And I kept telling myself, I'm like, if I can stand on a Swiss ball, I can climb out of a tank in a broken heel. And it's one of those situations that, you know, comes up in an Expendables type of situation that I never thought would ever come up.
Who are you most starstruck by? You're working on that film.
Harrison Ford. I was an idiot when I met Harrison Ford. I didn't know what to say. Like, I was so obsessed with Star Wars as a kid that, you know, I get dumb around Han Solo for sure. Couldn't help it. Everyone else I was kind of chill with. He kind of like, you know, broke it for me. But yeah, I was so embarrassed.
Ronda, in talking to the cast of The Ultimate Fighter 20, the strawweight ladies, you were mentioned multiple times as an influence. Are you surprised at how, in such a short period of time, you've gone from new kid on the block to UFC star and now being mentioned as an influence in a lot of ladies' careers?
Well, I'm surprised that they're mentioning me in a positive light.
They are.
It's kind of cool. I like the new division. I like these chicks that, you know, I guess not having to compete against them helps out. And I'm actually very, very surprised by that. I would think that it wouldn't be until after I retired before I started seeing much appreciation from the other girls. So it's very sweet of them. And I really do wish them the best. I'm so excited about the new division, and it's going to be so good for the UFC champions to have another women's champion as well. And I've been a fan of the strawweight division for a while. I would buy the Invicta cards just to watch them a lot of the time. And it's such a deep division full of like so many, you know, talented and interesting characters that I think is going to be probably the most successful. Probably the division that's generating the most interest for a while.
And I know you weren't the biggest fan of coaching The Ultimate Fighter, but will you be following this upcoming season of the strawweight ladies?
I get in trouble for talking about Ultimate Fighter, so I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm skipping that one.
Ronda, can you talk about just this week, you know, the expo, the 2 fight cards Saturday, Sunday? Talk about how it feels different, how they do this up, you know, at another level compared to the other fight cards.
It'll feel a lot different after I'm done fighting. I get like super tunnel vision when it's time for my fight. If anything, it's different in that there's so much going on that it kind of dilutes the attention. With, you know, there just being one event and you are the main event, and it makes things a little bit easier. And it's kind of nice to know that there's so many fans here that, you know, that Alexis is getting swarmed, and I feel like it's new for her. So I was like, go get her, you gotta get Alexis. But not like in a bad way, you know. I'm sure it's very, very cool and interesting for her, but you know, I like the environment to be as different from normal as possible for her.
Yeah, anything specific about her game that obviously you're preparing for?
I mean, I pretty much just listed out her whole game plan like a second ago, but...
Oh, sorry, you must have been looking that way and I couldn't hear you, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's
mostly I'm looking out for her looking for head kicks and trying to elbow when I try to clinch, and just accepting that she's going to get thrown and looking more for getting a good position after the throw than really trying to defend it.
Ronda, are you surprised that, like, sometimes when you speak, you'll say, like, people, maybe the public or people don't look at you kindly or whatever, you know, you're surprised at certain things, but yet you see a lot of evidence that the fans really do like you. I mean, you attract them. Do you feel, you know, there's like you're swinging in the middle, kind of, like a hate, a love. How do you feel about your image?
As long as it's a topic of debate, and I think it's good that it's constantly, you know, moving around, and that it's not getting stagnant, and so it's still, you know, something that people are interested in discussing, and I just care that people are interested, that's all.
Care if they love you or hate you, as long as they're paying attention to you.
Yes.
All right.
Ronda, you've been outspoken about performance enhancing drugs in the sport, top of the cycle and whatnot. What's your take on what happened to H.E.A.T this week?
I think it's extremely unfortunate, and I think it was the right decision for him to retire after that happened.
What about the decision to take him off TV?
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
You really do have tunnel vision.
I do have television. I am like, I'm not reading the news. I'm not anything.
Did you hear about his second drug test failure?
Yes, I did hear something came back.
H.E.A.T.
They can test for H.E.A.T now? See, I'm totally out of it. That's so awesome they can test for H.E.A.T.
They look for a different enzyme, a byproduct of H.E.A.T. They look for that, so now they can detect it, yes.
Oh, that happened 5 years ago?
Really? UFC hasn't been doing it, but they've had the testing available.
There's so much new news going on. Wow, you're good at this, Ariel. I should look at your website more often. MMAfighting.com, everybody. Over here.
So he tested positive and he was taken off TV and Fox and whatnot. I think that was the right call.
From the TV side, I mean, I don't know. I can't really say. I mean, Chael's a friend, and I can't pretend to understand why he would do any of this stuff. And I'm not his employer, and I'm not going to make those kinds of decisions. But from how I really feel about performance-enhancing drugs, I mean, if you fail a PED in an Olympic sport, you are out from the next Olympics, and then you can't even compete until after that. So that's up to an 8-year ban. And I think that 8 years is pretty, you know, it's a pretty good punishment. I mean, I think it's been working pretty good for the U.S. and still we have people slip up. And I think that the reason why people keep trying to test that border is because there's really not that much of a punishment afterward. I mean, what, you got to pay a little bit of fine and take a year off? I mean, you know, people take years off and go on vacation all the time. I mean, like that fine costs a vacation, so it's pretty much you get the year off without the vacation. And I really do think that there should be much more strict enforcement of the rules, and like possibly career-ending things like that, because if people think they're going to get away with it, they're going to try. And I grew up in the Olympic system, and I was like, if you try that stuff, you know, you're out forever. And plus, it won't mean as much to me winning, because it wouldn't be me winning. It would be something else. else for people to give themselves the justification that, oh, everybody else is doing it, I'm just trying to even the playing field. I'm like, you should want to be good enough to beat them in spite of it. And that's my way of getting back to them. I was like, I'm so much better than you that even with all the drugs and everything that you do, I would beat you anyway. And that's the way that I can think of to get back to them and really use that to not give myself an excuse to lose, but an excuse to get that much better.
How rampant do you think it is in your division?
I don't think it's so big on the women's side, and I think that they also make much more of a difference on the women's side than they would for the men's. So I'm glad that it's not so prevalent, and I would like to see that it be entirely eradicated. And I think that making examples out of people is something that needs to be done. And I've been being drug tested since I was 14 years old. Random Olympic drug testing, everything under the sun. And I mean, you're a 14-year-old kid. You take all kinds of sinus medication and Advil, all these kinds, but I'll pick a Flintstone vitamin off the floor. I don't know what, but I mean, I haven't had a slip up. And people are like, oh no, things happen. I slipped and fell on a steroid. No, you don't slip and fall on a steroid. I've been being drug tested for, what was that, 10, 13? That's 13 years, right? 13 years, and the U.S. anti-doping testing is more strict than anyone else. So, I mean, I don't really buy it when people fail at all. I mean, people can come up with reasons, but I mean, even if I take like a small, like if I have some sort of therapy thing, like okay, we have to inject some sort of something into your knee or whatever for this thing, like I always get papers and I send it off. Like they know. I mean, you should just be overly cautious and inform everybody with what's going on in your body.
Would you read like the WADA list and like if somebody went and gave you something, say, hey, you have a cold, take this. Do you as a fighter go on and look at the WADA list to see what's prohibited and if that would be on that list? Are you that proactive?
I don't take stuff for colds. I'm pretty paranoid. Like when I was doing Olympic test, like testing as a kid, all I took was Flintstone vitamins as it. And now I just, everything that I take now, it's like it all goes to Dolce. It's all like just herbs, everything. Nothing comes out of the lab. It's just ground up plants. That's all I ever have. And anything that I take medication-wise, I always submit it and just let them know, like, hey, just so you guys know, I don't even check the list. I don't even see if it's on the list or not. I'm just like, this is what I'm taking, just in case. And that way they'll always know.
Ronda, the talks with Gina Carano have stalled a bit. Are you still hopeful that you get that fight?
I just want to beat Alexis, and then I'll think about after that.
Are you going to fight again this year after this fight, or are you hoping to get one more?
I'd like to fight again on New Year's, yeah.
And one last thing, I saw your Instagram where you had wrestling world on your reps. Do you think he's going to? Can you make a play to him to come back? How concerned are you that he's taking this hiatus?
You know what? No one can make you have passion for something if you don't. And I felt that way about judo. It was over. I was over it, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And regardless of how good I was at it, I didn't want to be there. And so if he wants to come back and find that passion again, I would love to see that. But if it's time for him to move on with his life, then he has 100% of my support in that as well.
Do you have any interest in doing that? Because looking at your Instagram, you're doing these matches. Are you planning for a career in WWE after this?
Well, mostly it's so similar to planning out fight scenes. So I was just kind of like messing around and thinking about like cool moves to do in fight scenes. And I really think of like WWE is like the purest form of stunts, kind of like how movies, they say the purest form of acting is theater because it's live and it's all in one shot. And I feel like WWE is the same thing for stunt work. And I just kind of like try to borrow from them a little bit, and I could steal some of their stunt work and throw it in a movie. And if an opportunity comes up to, show up and be a guest host or whatever, it'd be pretty cool.
You like one match, maybe?
I don't know. I gotta beat Alexis. Let's just get through that.
Okay. All right.
Well, you talk a lot on Embedded about losing muscle, not having the ability to really rest your body in between counts. How do you feel right now going into this one?
It's definitely the strongest that I've ever been. I regained a lot of that strength from McMahon too, but for this one a lot more. And I haven't lifted weights for 8 months. I stopped lifting weights, and I'm like the most muscular that I've ever been. I just spent more of my time focusing on improving my skill set and making sure that my diet is perfect and the structure of my training is perfect and not so much hitting heavy weights. But yeah, I feel like I even went back to do some like reshoots and can and everything else, and everyone was like, oh my God, you were so much more muscular. And even when I went from shooting Entourage to the one-day reshoots of Entourage, they were like, oh my God, you put on so much muscle. And I'm like, I didn't lift any weights at all. It's just, you know, we've really gotten to a point where we're able to refine training to be as effective as possible.
Why wouldn't they be good for you? I mean, what, like, in other words, just to keep the muscle lean and everything, aren't weights good for that?
Weights? Well, I asked my coaching about that, my coaching staff, but...
So you don't get into that, like...
I don't really want to get into the particulars of it, but I just wasn't feeling, I didn't feel like it was the right way to go to rebuild this system.
One last question on that. How much, you know, when you say you're more muscular than you've ever been, you know, given how agile you have to be to do what you do, I mean, do you get to a point where you may be too muscular, and do you ever get concerned with that?
No, because the only weights I lifted for this camp were 1 and 2 pound weights. I just shadow boxed with weights, and that was it. So I was able to put on muscle that way, and I still kept my arms loose. And I do a lot of swimming to keep my shoulders really, really loose. So one problem I always had, I would get stiff shoulders from lifting and not be able to let my arms go. So we did a lot of swimming to be able to keep the arms loose, to be able to keep throwing my hands.
Ronda, you said on the UFC Countdown show that Alexis Davis is your biggest problem or toughest challenge. But there was a lot of hype like this coming in with Sarah McMahon as well because of her background in wrestling. What makes Alexis Davis the bigger challenge to you than Sarah McMahon was in your mind?
Well, for one thing, I already beat Sarah McMahon. So, you know, my mom always said no one's easy until after you beat them. And so I already beat her, so I can't say she's the hardest ever because I have a new problem. And that automatically makes Alexis the hardest test ever. And, you know, there's more on the line now than there has ever before for me. And Alexis really has nothing to lose. And so I care so much more and I train so much harder. And I really feel like the more pressure there is, the more I find to love myself, the better I do. Some people are the opposite. She seems like she does better with the least amount of pressure, and I do better with the most amount of pressure, and I think we're both going to be coming out with the best scenario possible for each of us.
Did you have the same type of feeling with McMahon before the fight in terms of thinking she was at that moment your toughest challenge?
Yeah,
you beat her?
Definitely. And I knew that McMahon was my toughest challenge, and that's why I think it's one of my best matches, because the more the challenge and the more the pressure, the better I do. And I feel like I fought above myself in that scenario as well.
Would you consider your win over Sarah a vindication of strategy or of physical skill? Like, because you thought of, hey, she's not going to expect me to strike and throw knees, so that was strategy, but then your physical skill accomplished it.
I think both, because in order to make the striking work, I had to out-wrestle her. And to out-wrestle an Olympic wrestler takes quite a bit of physical skill. And to put her in a wrestling situation would make her concentrate so much on wrestling that she would forget about the striking and leave that open. And so I think it had a lot to do with both.
I know you stay pretty focused on your own camp, but have you given any thought to the other title fight between Weidman and Machida? Do you think Weidman's going to be able to keep his belt?
Well, to be honest, I picked against Weidman the first 2 times. You know, I was going for Anderson the first 2 times because, you know, Anderson has always been a hero of mine, and I still think he's the greatest of all time, pound for pound. But I was wrong twice. And if this was the first time that Machida and Weidman were fighting, I would probably pick Machida. But I learned my lesson. I was wrong by Weidman twice, and well, I'm not going to do it a 3rd time. So. Yeah, if I was just looking at this on paper, I would pick Machida, but knowing how Weidman has performed in his career so far and under pressure and how he's been doing, then I have to go towards Weidman.
And Sunday we have another big fight, Edgar Penn. Do you have any thoughts on that fight?
Why do you gotta make me like say mean things about my friends? Well, look, I'm biased on this one, because the first like MMA star that I ever met, BJ Penn, came to my locker room after I think it was my first Strikeforce fight, and just because he would go through that trouble and really made my day, I always have to go for BJ regardless of who it is.
trainer, they were talking about the importance of your jiu-jitsu training for this fight, because they said that one day somebody's gonna come and know how to defend your armbar, and you have to know how to defend yourself. Do you think that this is a situation, like, do you think that Alex would bring this to the fight?
I've definitely taken her jiu-jitsu black belt into consideration, and I did a lot of training with Henner and Hero and Gracie for this fight, and they've really been able to add a lot to my game that I had as whole. As coming from a judo background, we only have short bursts to work on the ground, so I was so offensive on the ground, and I just threw all caution to the wind, had no defense. Whereas Hero and Henner are very opposite style. They have that more meticulous, attention to defense style, and they really helped me to balance out my ground game from being not just about attacking, but also being aware of your situation and being able to escape and dealing with worst case scenarios as well. And so a lot of the training that I do with them, I start in the worst case scenario and I work my way out, so that when I do take these crazy risks, I'm much more confident knowing that any situation I end up in, I know what to do and know how to get out of it.
What does the UFC do from a fan's point of view? What does the UFC do better than any other sport?
Marketing. I think the UFC really keeps the fans a priority, and then you see that in how it is in the live show. You see that the UFC puts a lot of emphasis on making sure that the fans that are watching the show live have an amazing time in the way that you don't see other sports like boxing. They care more about the pay-per-view numbers because they make so much more money from the pay-per-view that they neglect the live show. And I really think that the UFC really, they market themselves really well outside the sport, but they also pay attention to taking care of the fans that are actually at the event.
Carrying on that, Ronda, actually, can you send a shout out and like a positive message to the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans of America, as well as people that are going to be watching overseas this fight and be looking to you? Is there any message that you can give?
Any message?
Yes. Any shout out?
A shout out. Okay, let me think of a good one. Well, I was complaining about it being hot over here, but I'm going to totally stop knowing that the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans of America are all going to be watching. So I appreciate you guys, doing what you do, sitting in the heat for all of us, and I hope that I could at least entertain you for one evening and let you guys have a little bit of fun, and just come home safe, and we appreciate you.